Hello, second grade. Happy Friday. It is time for math. And today we are going to be talking about examples and non-examples of fractions using chocolate. So raise your hand if you like chocolate. Maybe a little bit higher if you really like chocolate. Yeah, I really like chocolate too. So today we're going to be talking about examples and non-examples. And I want to review what that means really quickly before we get started. So let me open up my document camera. There it is. Okay, so see, there's my hand. All right, so we were talking about that word example and non-example. And so let's think. We're going to have a rule right here. So I'm going to give you a rule. And if I write the rule, chocolate. Oops, that's not how you spell that. Chocolate. That is the rule I'm giving. And I'm going to find examples and non-examples of chocolate. So here, is this an example of chocolate or a non-example of chocolate? This is an example of chocolate. It is chocolate. It follows that rule. So what about this marker? Is this an example of chocolate? No, this is not an example of chocolate. This is a non-example of chocolate. So that would go over there. So we're going to be doing that same activity, but instead of talking about if something's chocolate or not, it's all going to be chocolate, but we're going to be talking about if it is examples of certain fractions. And this chocolate, I'll just tell you a secret, it's pretty old. So I'm not going to be eating this chocolate. I just checked the date. I will definitely not be eating this chocolate. But I am going to be cutting it and partitioning it into fractions so that we can then decide if it is an example of that fraction or a non-example of that fraction. So I have 2 chocolate bars that were gifts to me from previous students. And so we're going to open it up and we're going to start partitioning it. So here we go. It's very well wrapped. Ooh, I broke it. So this might not be an example of fractions. Oh my goodness. All right, so I just got a brand new fresh chocolate bar. And this is a Hershey's. So it's not going to break, hopefully. But so here we go. And I want to break this chocolate bar into I want to break it into halves. So I'm going to write halves down here. Okay? And how many parts does halves have? How many parts do we see when we make halves? We see 2 parts when we make halves. I'm going to minimize that. So we see 2 parts when we make halves. And so I'm going to break this into 2 parts. And I want you guys to tell me if it's an example or a non-example of halves. What do you guys think? Is this an example or a non-example of halves? This is a non-example of halves. Can you guys tell me why this is a non-example of halves? Why does this go over here? What was that? Because it's not equal, right? Because it's not equal parts. If I said here, you get to have this half and I'm going to have this half, you probably would think that's not fair, Miss Sigler, because those halves are not equal. So those are, they're not halves actually, because they're not equal. Those are just 2 parts. So I'm going to take a different chocolate bar and I want you guys to tell me where I should break this bar in half to make halves. So should I break it here? Should I break it here? Should I break it here? I think I heard the most people say I should break it here. So I'm going to break it right there. And I want you guys to tell me, is this an example of halves? It is an example of halves. Can you guys tell me or the person next to you why it's an example of halves? So this is an example of halves because both of the parts are the same size. They are equal parts and each one is called 1/2. So I'm going to write half and half. These over here are not halves. So that is our first example of a non-example for this activity. So I'm going to use my same 2 chocolate bars, and now I want to make examples of fourths, or an example of fourths and a non-example of fourths. Okay, so I'm going to pick up this one first. So I've got one piece over here and one piece over here, and I'm going to break it into 4 parts. So let me go. Let me say, there, I'll do that one, that, and then that. So what do you guys think? I've got 4 parts, right? Is this an example of fourths or a non-example of fourths? What do you guys think? This is a non-example of fourths. Tell me why. Why is this not an example of fourths? I heard someone say that it's because they are not equal parts. And if you said that these are not equal parts, you are correct. They are not the same size. It would not be fair to split up a chocolate bar into 4 pieces to share with my friends if it looked like this. I would be very upset if I was the friend who got this little chocolate guy, right? So that would not be an example of fourths because it is not equal parts. So now I want you guys to help me break this one into fourths. So we've already done halves, which is always a good first step whenever we're trying to create more pieces, not bigger pieces. When we're trying to create more pieces, we should always start with halves if we want them to be equal size pieces. So tell me what I should do to create fourths here. I'm listening. I should break both of these 2 parts into 2 more parts, shouldn't I, that are equal? So I'm going to take this one part and I'm going to break it into 2 equal parts. So there we go. There's 2 equal parts. And this one, I'm going to break this one into 2 equal parts. And look, how many parts do we have? I'm going to put that one sideways. We have four parts. And those 4 parts, are they equal? They are. So is this an example or a non-example of fourths? This is an example, and I just put it over there because this is my cleaned off space. But yes, this is an example of fourths. Now we are going to try and make examples and non-examples of eighths. And this is getting a little yucky. I left my eraser. But so now we're going to do eighths. And that's a tricky spelling. So that is 8 with a at the end of it, eighths. So I think I'm going to start over here. I need to make 8 pieces. If I'm making eighths, I want them to be equal parts, right? But I think I'm just going to wing it here, okay? So I have 4 pieces. Now how many pieces do I have now? Or parts. I see 1 part, 2 part, 3 part, 4 part, 5 parts. I need to make a few more. What about this? Now I have 6 parts, and I think I'm just going to, what did I do? I broke it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I accidentally made 9. So is that an example or non-example of example or non-example of eighths? Well, that's 9 parts, so it's definitely not an example of eighths. And even if there were only 8 pieces, if this was still 1 piece, would that be an example or non-example of eighths? That would also be a non-example because these pieces are not equal, right? So this is going to have a big snack maybe because these do look pretty tasty. All right, so now over here, let's turn this into an example of eighths. What do I need to do? Someone tell me what I need to do. I'm listening. I need to break each of these 4 parts into 2 more parts. Well, let's try it. And those parts need to be equal, right? So this one's gonna be a little bit harder because it's actually not like before I was breaking it right on lines. Now I'm breaking it in the middle. So I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna try my very best. I'm gonna go here. Here. There we go. There we go. Miss Sigler is not a robot, so I cannot cut chocolate super perfectly, but I'm trying my best. Okay, so I just broke all of those 4 parts into 2 more equal, each one of those into 2 equal parts. So now let's look. I have how many parts over here? I have 8 parts, and are they equal? Yeah, pretty much they are. As best as I could do it, these are equal parts. And does that mean that this is an example or a non-example of 8s? That means that this, since it is 8 equal parts from one whole, it is a example of 8s. So that is it for our little lesson. Thank you guys for joining me while I break all this chocolate into little pieces. After this, you guys are going to hop into the next video where you will see the review showing you how to complete your assignment. All right, guys, we will see you later. If it lets me pause. There we go.